welcome to episode 127 of Overdose and Chill. These are weekly commerce chats hosted by Overdose Digital. We are broadcasting live over LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them live and we'll get them answered on the spot. Just a bit of intros. My name is Sarah. I manage partnerships at Overdose for Asia, and we have our general manager, Tammy, also from the Overdose Asia office. And we're really excited to have this podcast with you guys today. So maybe just to kick things off, a little bit of intros on who is talking today. Tammy, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about how you got started at Overdose?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Sarah, for the intro. So I'm Tammy. I'm the general manager of Overdose Southeast Asia, based here in Singapore with Sarah. So how I started at Overdose is I was working in an agency here, a digital agency here in Singapore. And we had, in the past collaborated with Todd and Ryan on an e-commerce project. So when Overdose was formed and they were looking at expanding into, Asia and Singapore, it just made sense having had, sort of past collaborations that, we were acquired. And essentially that's how I got started with Overdose, really in the project management space, building a lot of interesting digital projects. And then when Overdose came along, we really shifted that focus from, digital projects, from say financial calculators and apps and content sites or reservation portals or even games to really, shifting that focus into the e-commerce space. So in a nutshell, that's how I got here.
And as the GM of the office, I know this is supposed to be a fireside chat, so we can also switch topics later. But I just, while we're on that note, I just wanted to ask, as the GM of the office in Asia, how have you found working with the team, leading the team, and are there any experiences that you think have helped shape the way you lead the team today?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, and I noticed that there's different sort of dynamics in the different offices. I think my observation here is because I've come from, the project management background, being really hands-on. I still find myself still really hands-on and into the detail with projects and clients. And I think that for me in the Asia team, I think that really works because we started off as a really small team, so everyone was hands on deck. People wore multiple hats, and I thought it was a really great opportunity for getting experience and actually knowing the work that we're producing. In terms of, I guess, leadership, I'd like to think that, the team can rely on me to know that I'm with them in the midst of the project or in the midst of a client, strategy that I'm really, really very much involved still. So yeah, that's I guess my style at this stage, and I like to, I'm seeing that evolve as our team has grown over the last few years quite significantly as well. We started off as a 3-man band or two guys and me, and we started off also quite male dominated, and then now as we've evolved, we're a team of 20 plus with team members not just in Singapore but in the region. We've got people in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Philippines, Vietnam. Am I missing anyone? I think that's it. And we're now very much so actually female dominated by a little bit. So it's great to see. Good to see some really great female leaders and female, strong characters in our business. So leading the charge.
I agree. So I've only been with Overdose for about 6 months now. But what struck me about the team when I first joined, and we had a cool offsite, and we really got to know each other, is that it's a really cool bunch of very talented people. Which I was not surprised by, but it was really refreshing to see how everybody is just really close despite the remote working arrangement, right? Like I think we have the core team in Singapore. It's still about 20 something people. But yeah, how is it like, with the whole remote, I think coordination across teams in a client-facing or services environment? Because this is not the environment that I came from. So it's
Right.
kind of interesting. Yeah.
Right, and I do want to get into that as well, into the environment you came from. But to answer your question, I think, really Overdose Southeast Asia grew, our size grew in the midst of COVID, So for a long time, we had people join the company, which we never met in person. Even though you were in Singapore, it was, it was always remote. And it was just really great when we could finally see each other. And, people were a lot taller than I imagined that they would be, because you interact with them sometimes, daily, weekly on Zoom. And when you actually met them in person, they're either really tall or like, a lot shorter than I expected, So that offsite that you mentioned was so refreshing, because we did have people fly in from, that we've known for almost a year or, more, and we've never met in person. But I think the success of it really comes down to communication, as is anything, communication is key. So we definitely put effort into having clear communication, whether it's through Zoom, whether it's just through our sort of team, team OD and chill, as we call it, or lepak and chill here in Singapore.
What's lepak? Just for the audience's understanding.
Actually, you might answer that better for me. I believe it. It's also to say like chill and relax, but it's localizing OD and chill. So actually, you should call OD and lepak, not chill and chill.
So we have our own localized version of OD and chill in Asia.
Correct.
It's called lepak. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right as well. Like lepak and chill. Parrot, don't kill me.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, we have people all over the place, but it doesn't feel. I don't think we feel like anyone feels disconnected, and I'd hope not. But I think that's the key thing. Is an important thing is communication, and just we're working closely together. So actually, the distance really doesn't matter to me, anyway.
Yeah. No, I think we have a really good mix of diversity in the office, in terms of age experiences, life experiences as well, and that's something that I talk about a lot internally amongst the leadership, like talent. How do we develop our talent? How do we identify talent? And something like personally that I feel has helped me identify better ways of working is actually by becoming a mom. And I know you're a mom as well. And we talked a little bit about this as well, because I mean your child is obviously a bit older than mine. Mine is still a toddler. I think. How old is yours?
Mine is 10.
Yeah.
Still, it gets harder every year. You would think that as a toddler it's really difficult, but actually no, when they start talking back or start ignoring that you're on Zoom with a client on client call,
No, I can't read their minds, but like I think something that's helped me grow as an individual and learn how to communicate better with people of different backgrounds is becoming a mom. And like I mean, just for example, like when the child is growing, and this is still fresh in my memory, right? They can't communicate, they can't verbalize, what emotions they're feeling and everything. And so you kind of basically have to infer, you have to read their minds almost, right? And in a way, communication with teams, especially in a remote setting where you can't see them face to face, I think there's a sense that I think people who have kids pick up on, or okay, maybe I'm not I'm generalizing here, but like you pick up on certain cues, and I think that at least has helped me, like and I've always been a people person, so maybe that's a bit different. But like you pick on certain cues, and I think it helps you to communicate with people a little bit better, because a lot of what happens in Asia is you say something, but actually like the person is thinking another thing. And
Right.
we talked about this yesterday as well, where our first interaction, right? Where where I was meeting Overdose for the first time. This was way back, right?
I recall this, yeah.
Yeah, like on the surface there were these topics, but actually like in the background, in our minds, it was something else. Yeah, do you want to talk about the experience, Tammy?
Yeah, so well, I guess we're talking about motherhood, and I don't know. I think on one hand you might say that motherhood makes you potentially more empathetic, more looking at those nonverbal cues. But I think one thing I've observed for me is my patience. I don't have as much patience nowadays, so I tend to call it as it is. And I'd like to think that the team that I work with, or the clients that I work with, appreciate that level of directness. So yeah, I think that's talking about motherhood and how that has impacted working style. But yeah, let's talk about our first interaction. I recall very clearly back in this was going back maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe. Yeah, Sarah, you've come from platform, background, Shopify, and I remember meeting you. Yeah, and it was an interesting. I still remember to that day, meeting you, thinking, not sure whether we're quite gelling there. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So a bit of context. So I've before joining Overdose, I managed partnerships and market development for Shopify for, I guess, Southeast Asia. I was first hire for Shopify to be based in Singapore. We had teams in Japan and India at that time. I think that was 2018 or so. And but in theory, I would have been the right person, to have a conversation with you guys at Overdose and to move things forward. What was in reality was the role itself was about growing market, right? Growing Asia, growing Asia from Singapore. It was acquisition at scale through channel partnerships. The logic being the ecosystem would help clients, once they've onboarded. So any kind of partner, agencies were one, but any tech partner, any government partner, and awareness building amongst existing and new clients. And lobbying internally for market support and resources with, a lovely 12-hour time zone difference between Canada and Singapore. So that was the context. And I think something that was not obvious was, just I think the assumption that, that my role then was to grow agency relationships. It was, but that was a small part of the whole, of the whole mandate. And of course, being the first person on the ground, you want to show impact, and immediate impact, or as soon as possible, right? To show value. So I remember having the conversation with you and Todd. And that was like one of 5. Every day I met 5 new partners, or anyone who could be considered as a partner. And partnerships craft is great. Like, there's some partnerships people are some of the best people to work with, because they will never close the door, right? We all understand the connections, right? Reciprocity. Yeah. So we'll be like, like it could work, yes. But like when, that would be the short-term, medium-term, long-term relationships. And like we discussed this a bit, partnerships is a long-term game. So I remember, I think there were introductions made, and I remember thinking, I'm really not sure how I can work with these guys right now to kick something off right now, which is what I needed. Whereas maybe in other platforms that were more established, they would have like really niche, dedicated people with like, really clear goals and KPIs and specific things that they were driving for. So I think but that wasn't communicated. Yeah, and so like
exactly.
that's how we all left the meeting feeling like, I'm not sure that was the best use of it.
Yeah. I mean, just for context, I think, we've, here at Overdose, we've always been very clear that we're platform agnostic, right? And I think, potentially that was, at that time with the KPIs that you had, I guess you were looking for potentially partners that could focus their energy directly on, your partnership. And I totally appreciate that. But, now that it's interesting, the years have passed, you've had your time with, at the platform side, and the partnership must have worked really well because you've joined us, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that as to what, I guess that when we talk about partnerships being a long-term, sort of goal or game, how has that sort of evolved for you?
It is, and it's really interesting. There's a lot of podcast material and other material from the president of Shopify right now, Harley, about partnerships and how it basically amplified, Shopify's presence. And it's actually a really, really smart approach. And I see a lot of, platforms and tech companies using this approach as well. Basically, offering a piece of access into some kind of technology, some kind of code, with, building a program around it, offering other businesses to build on your business. It can be an agency like Overdose building on a platform, or it can be, incentivizing or encouraging educators, any kind of, in this case, it's like, commerce entrepreneurs, influencers, to kind of like, create material about entrepreneurship. And by the way, why not consider Shopify, right? So it's actually, and by this, you're getting like these kind of partners or these players to advocate for the platform, which is such a smart thing to do if you're looking to grow at scale. So I think I learned. I mean, and Shopify has like one of the most robust partner programs, which they just revamped. So it was a great learning curve. And I remember looking at OD and thinking, wow, I really like the quality of the work that comes out from Overdose. If I were a brand, I would be quite happy with, the way I'm represented digitally by the work that was done. So I always had a great impression of the work that you guys do. And I think there was a time where, I took a bit of a career break, had a kid. I was thinking about what to do next, and there was an opportunity with OD, and so I thought, you know what, why not? Because despite working on a platform is great because you have access to a ton of data and insights. You can see so much, and you get so many trends, and you can identify so many things that are really useful to to clients. But you don't see the nitty-gritty, you don't see the day-to-day challenges. And I heard these from other agency partners, from other tech partners, and I would always feed that back, and try and lobby for more market support. We need more channels, we need more, features, etc. Basically use this data to try and make a case, for the market. But I remember looking at OD and thinking, like, hey, I think it would be great. I don't know much about the inner workings of, agencies. I don't know anything, but I'm game. let's give it a shot. So I think having an appetite for risk as well is something that I find makes for. I think it's a healthy thing. It's a healthy thing to have, and that's something that I notice people who thrive in positions where you have to do something new, like my market development role, like or what I'm doing right now for partnerships in OD. Like we've never really had a partnerships person for Overdose in Asia before, so it's kind of new. So I think having a personality type that's open to this, having an openness to some kind of risk taking, makes a really good fit for someone who you're trying to place, in a position where there's ambiguity, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You're crafting what that role looks like for you. Really inventing that and owning that. And there isn't like a clear roadmap of what this role is. And yeah, I definitely, since you've come on board, you've really taken it and owned it. So it's really good to see as well. And it's like you said, it's something we haven't had, and you bring that flavor that we didn't know we needed. We didn't know we wanted. Yeah.
You didn't know you needed me until I came here.
Yeah. Or not the way it looks, So yeah, no, it's been good. It's just been so interesting to have known you from, however many years ago at, in that capacity and role. And yeah, and then now you're on this side of the fence. It's great. Looking beneath what it takes, I guess, to do the work that we do. And I'm really glad to hear that the output that you're seeing when you were on the other side was, something that you could recognize the quality of it and the good work that we do. Yeah, and that's what we're committed to doing.
I think it speaks for itself. Yeah. So I think like this session is going to be fairly Shopify centric, just because of my background, but also because of the work that we're doing in the Asia office.
That's right.
We noticed that in Asia, across all other Overdose offices, we tend to work mostly on the Shopify platform.
That's good.
Yeah, and I wanted to just have a discussion here on why you think this is the case here, and what kind of clients, how they typically use the platform.
I mean, I would say you're right that we're platform agnostic, but when we look at the split of the trends, I guess you would say, the clients that we work with here in the Asia office tend to lean towards the Shopify SaaS architecture. I mean, it's largely in part because Shopify doing such a great job in marketing their platform and their services here, and they've evolved a lot since 5 years ago. Where I guess it really now it's really come up to the enterprise, really at the enterprise level, and and our clients here their requirements. They have definitely levels of complexity, and I feel that here in the Asia office, we're really stretching the limits of and maximizing the limits of what the Shopify platform can provide, versus what potentially other offices might, other markets, they would go to the likes of, Adobe Commerce or, Commerce Tools and BigCommerce and so forth, right? What we're seeing here is there's definitely a preference for Shopify. Perhaps the presence is more well known. So the kind of work that we do is we do a lot of customizations on Shopify platform here for your clients, and it's largely in part to here they're often organizations that are dealing with legacy systems or custom systems, whether it's CRMs or loyalty programs, that aren't SaaS based, that they need to, for whatever reason, still need to work with because their regional headquarters say they must. But what we do is we definitely are able to work with these merchants and their specific requirements and customize Shopify to work with these other services. We've done some really interesting stuff here, like really interesting stuff on Shopify. And sometimes it's not visible on the front end. It's all the stuff that goes into the back end that we do, right? That
could you give an example, Tammy?
Oh my gosh, you put me on.
Like, you don't have to go super deep, but just what made it super interesting?
I think for me, I really like the idea of solutioning, something that it's not cookie cutter. And So an example, we have a client now, which I won't name, that we're doing a really cool sort of rental, sort of bike rental system, where it's inventory that's shared over event space, and also from just normal hire. And it's not something you would typically think to use Shopify for.
Yeah.
But just that solutioning around that, we can make Shopify work with these sort of requirements, and it comes down to how we sort of at the bottom level probably gets a bit dry now. It's around the product data structure, how we do the product data structure. Before, yes, we can make a very beautiful site, but it's actually what's the foundation of it? How does the data flow? What's the logic? What's the mechanics? What's the conditional display rules? And all the sort of stuff that the solution parts is it's really interesting, and it makes it's a mind scratcher. It's not something that you just come into work, cookie cutter, and you leave, thinking you're doing the same thing day in, day out. And that's what I really love, is that with all the different sort of types of merchants and different categories, we've worked with furniture brands, shoe brands, skincare brands, food brands, almost like a supermarket kind of brands. It's just the variety and the different sort of business requirements. That's the really interesting stuff. And we look into the detail and go, okay, how can we make Shopify work for you? Or any other. We do of course do projects with other partners as well, like other platforms. Like we have some WordPress. For example, WordPress. We're doing a WordPress front end with a Shopify backend. That's quite an interesting piece of work that we're doing as well. We're doing stuff on VTEX for marketplace clients. So I think the solutioning aspect of all these projects is what's really exciting and interesting for me. And
what makes you want to wake up every day and come to work.
Yeah, it's it keeps the brain alive, keeps you stretching that brain muscle. So I think that I feel like values for success here in OD is this willingness to learn. You're never going to know everything, and collaboration is so key, because we have such a wealth of knowledge and experience across the whole group. And that's the other thing that I really love. It's like we might come with a problem statement that here in the Asia office we haven't encountered before, and we put it out there to the rest of the group, and they'll go, yeah, we've done this. We've done this for this client. This is an example of how we did the solutioning and strategy. And it's just that constant learning process. And of course, as we know, Shopify as a platform, they're constantly growing and evolving as well. With the release of latest sort of updates that just come in. Now we're constantly being able to evolve and get, okay, that's the past. That's how things were done back then. Now we have to look at how we're going to, I guess, pivot or adjust, the strategy and things like that. So I think that's the nature of it. The work that we do, and I think for even e-com and retail, though, it's not set and forget. You have to constantly be, looking at what's coming and be ready to evolve along with it.
Yeah. Do you think one reason also for this market and the take-up rate is pricing?
I think that definitely plays a part, I would say. I guess the pricing is definitely more attractive, more accessible for merchants in this region compared to perhaps other platforms.
Even with like customizations, apps, themes, stuff like that.
It depends, because as part of what we do in discovery is to validate that. So most of the time for the requirements that we see, even if it's market expansion, internationalization, it still makes sense to stick with Shopify. And sometimes we deal with clients who have a short-term, or not say short-term, medium-term goal. It's like, this is an MVP. We know that if we want to scale and expand, we need to potentially move up to something more bigger, expensive, and so forth. But this is what works for now. And then what we do is make it work and optimize and get, that, I suppose, that focus on conversion to make it a really successful story for that short to medium term, with that view in the future of, scaling up. So we're starting to see that with, for example, a Shopify client. We're doing some really cool stuff on a blended storefront with, D2C and B2B sort of component. And we evaluated Shopify's B2B offering as well as other sort of B2B offerings to determine which was the best fit for now. And then we're sort of looking at the roadmap and going, where we see this particular project or client going is potentially eventually moving to a sort of headless approach where I guess the composable commerce approach, and that's we can start to plan, this is what a roadmap might look like for you. So Shopify works for the now, but what's your plan, your 5-year plan? Potentially we want to slowly transition to a composable stack. You've got a question.
That's a question from Farid. I'm gonna just say, do you feel moving forward Shopify will be the #1 platform in Asia, and how will that affect Overdose's value of being platform agnostic? I think I just want to say one thing before, Tammy, I think you take this question, is actually being platform agnostic from a client perspective, I feel is really important, because things evolve.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, and that's what you were saying, Tammy, right? But one of the reasons why I think technologies like Adobe have just such a big presence globally, is because they've just been there at the right time, and
Right.
when markets were growing, when people were looking at commerce technologies, they were there. And later on there's SaaS, there's Shopify, and now we're talking about headless and maybe composable. So there's just this constant evolution, which I think, as doing what we do in OD, being platform agnostic is key.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So, I mean, to Farid's question, yes, what we're seeing is a majority of clients in Asia end up on Shopify, but we still do take that platform agnostic approach in the evaluation process, in the discovery. So, case in point, that client I mentioned, Shopify works for them right now, but we know that they have plans to move to, a different platform in the future. That's in the roadmap. So I think it's in those discovery and evaluation with the clients is that, okay, platform agnostic means we need to look at what are your requirements for right now? What are your long-term requirements? What works for right now? And how can we make sure that we build something that, we're not going to throw out in 2 years, right? That we can slowly evolve with you. So I don't think it affects our platform agnostic sort of mission here. I just see that, like you mentioned, for Adobe Commerce, they had the right product at the right time, and Shopify has caught up. I guess if you could call it that, in terms of the years of how long
in this market, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But at OD, because obviously we have teams all over the world, therefore we also have capabilities.
Correct.
And we still service clients across all platforms, right? And I think that's also like a really smart way to do business, and to offer value to clients. So yeah, I think there is this fit for this part of the world for now.
Correct.
And it's where like our office has built quite a lot of expertise on. But it's not to say that we don't work across other platforms as well. I think I just want to draw the conversation back to Asia, just to put some fun facts out there, because it is a growing market in this I guess in the global macroeconomic sense of things. Despite slowing growth, economic uncertainty, there's like a great report from Google, Temasek, and Bain about the Southeast Asian digital economy. It's projected to reach $200 billion by the end of 2023, grow 20% year on year, and Southeast Asia, not including China and India, right? So Asia as a growth market for clients looking to sell out, for businesses looking to sell in to a burgeoning middle class, incredibly young and tech-savvy population with accelerated spending appetite post-COVID. I think it's what I'd love to highlight, and this is something that I've done since Shopify days, right? Lobby for my market, right? So this is just me putting stats out there for the Asia market as an opportunity to whoever's listening, partners, clients, that there is actually a lot happening here. And I think, one thing I wanted to use this time for, Tammy, is talk about like how businesses use commerce technologies in Asia, like what we found as opposed to other markets in ANZ, in North America, and Europe. And how that's kind of like, what the mentality is, for businesses when they're approaching commerce. Because like, I'll just give you an example. Like one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of businesses in Asia, they tend to start off with a offline presence first, city, with a physical space, there's an investment, you gain traction, or more recently in the past 10 years, marketplaces, right? Low investment, great way to like test and learn, and then maybe consider a own branded, online presence later on, when you're trying to go global or go international. And going international actually like is one of the first things that comes to people's minds when they're setting up businesses here, right? Like it's just either they come from a production market, like Vietnam or China, India, or the domestic market just is a bit smaller, like in Singapore. High purchasing power, high purchasing intent, digitally savvy, but small, right? So these are some of the first things that I feel, based on speaking to like clients, that I think come to people's minds when they're thinking about commerce technologies, versus I think in maybe countries where it's really spread out. Retail offline might not be the best way, to get started. You want to be found, you get on the yellow pages, you get on Google Maps, there's a different thought process to how people approach commerce. I just want to get your thoughts on that as well, Tammy.
I think definitely marketplace is huge here, right? And like you said, is low investment. People can start selling fairly quickly, which I think ties into this also merchants' expectations when they start looking at brand or investing in their brand.com is, and they need to be quick to market. We can't build this massive thing that's going to take months and months and months. It's quick to market and then iterations, right? So I think that for the merchants that we have who have started potentially on marketplace or offline and then looking at building the brand.com, they come to us when they get to the point where they realize that they don't own their own data, and that's one of the great things about marketplace, but also the pitfalls, right? So when we talk about, building loyalty, doing potential email marketing and so forth, building the customer database, that's where brand.com really, really comes in. And often the conversation we then have with them is, okay, yes, we'll build you your brand.com, your e-com site, but what's your strategy to make sure you're not cannibalizing yourself? What's the intent? Are you wanting people to buy on your brand.com or send them to marketplace? Because marketplace is so competitive. There's not just your own store's discounts on marketplace, but then there's the marketplace discount. So how do you compete with that? So I think these conversations are always, really interesting to have, and that those discussions around the strategy is so important. It's not just about throwing up a site for you so you can sell online. It's what's the strategy here? what's your marketing? How are you gaining customer acquisition and and so forth. So I feel that that's perhaps a nuance here that we need to be more aware of, is beyond just, we'll build you a brand.com. What else are you doing? What other channels are you selling on? How can we make omni-channel really work for you? That full, all the different, how can we be involved and contribute to make a real seamless experience for your customers for all your digital touch points, online. We've got another question.
So Jiaying, I love your question. Do we have one or more leadership qualities we're really proud of, and maybe one that's a work in progress? I think, Tammy, this is more for you, but I have some thoughts as well. So you go first.
Okay. I think that one thing I'm really proud of at Overdose, I really love, and also specifically Overdose Asia, is we are very flat structure. I think, like alluded to before, my role as GM, I still get in there, up to my elbows in projects and solutioning. So I feel like, from a leadership perspective, I feel that what I'm proud of is I'm approachable. I will get in there with my team and solution and do the work. But the flip side of the coin is what's the work in progress for me is that I do that too often. I tend to default to my, okay, let's go and the get shit done mentality, which what we're proud of here at Overdose is getting the get shit done, is investing more time in that leadership perspective, being able to empower or delegate for growth, as you've recently heard that term as well, delegating for growth so the team grows and I can step away. So that's my work in progress, is to empower and enable the team to step up without me having to jump in as often.
Yeah. So I think as females, and now we're going to the female leadership topic. So I think as females, we do tend to consider many more aspects than maybe necessary than others would typically. And it's not a bad or good thing. It's I think it's just the nature of how we think. Like for me to be at a stage where I can say I'm confident, or I'm satisfied, or I'm happy with whatever, a task, a knowledge document, or just learning, like even in this role, right? There's a lot more things that I consider before I would say I'm happy. So I think just bearing that in mind, whenever we talk to people, delegate, I think is to catch myself, and not to hold others to the same, I think is something that I'm trying to work on. So like that's definitely like I can be transactional. I can be incredibly transactional, and that's come from living overseas. I learned from the best in Germany. We were incredibly direct, and to the point where I was happy for the directness, because it saves people a lot of time, right? Like coming back to our first interaction, Tammy, like if we could have been direct with each other and had an honest conversation, we would not have gone like a whole route of like and wasted a couple of years really.
Yeah.
We could have done a lot more things together back then. So there is a element of directness which people have said is refreshing. It's okay. And I think in Asia, you can get away with it with people who you have rapport with already. Like I have had expat or foreign friends in Singapore tell me that they have been surprised at how direct some people can be with them. And it's usually with good intentions. There's usually some kind of perceived bond already. But like, yeah, like, so from a very get things done perspective, which I think, we have this in common, Tammy. I think that's something that, I'm trying to be very conscious of, especially when I talk to people. And I think living in and interacting with, like, the people from Canada and Shopify, the most lovely people, but you preface everything with an it's awesome, or what I had a crash course from my ANZ colleagues last time. It was, you're a star, you're a legend. I really had to wrap my head around, this is like, there's an employment relationship here where there's fair value exchange. I'm here to do a task and get rewarded. These additional words are maybe important in the way some people feel motivated and confident and empowered. But I really had to get my head around the different communication and working styles across cultures. And I just want to add that actually this is something that I think the team here in Asia come across a lot more than in maybe other markets, because there's just a lot of mixed experiences here. What we often talk about in the business side of things is, decision makers, they may have been born here but grew up there and selling into this other country.
Correct.
How do they think? Like, how do we best engage with them? Like, there's a lot of this that happens here, which I think is I just think it's really interesting. Yeah, sorry, Terry, you want to say something?
No, I totally concur. So, I lived and work in Australia as well. And, I remember when I first moved here and dealing with clients, like, wow, no, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? What'd you do? None of that. It was, very chop, get into it.
Yes, time is money, eh?
Yeah. So I remember feeling like, whoa, okay, I guess we're getting into it.
But it's like a client relationship, I think. Yeah. We really need to deliver value. Yeah.
Cool. As fellow members of the OD Asia Parents Club, would love to hear how you guys juggle leadership roles and time with your fans. I have to put my hand up and say I'm probably not as balanced as I'd like to be. I do sometimes do work at night, and So I will say that the working from home thing just really ruined that facade, right? Of this, mom goes to work, comes home, and has time for me. When no, I'm still at work at home and don't talk to me. So I definitely. That's a work in progress for me, Eston. Thanks for putting me on the spot there. But maybe Sarah, you might have a better. Yeah, you're a newer mom. You're a younger child. Definitely they demand more of you at that age. So how are you juggling leadership and parenting?
I think so with the younger kids, it's a bit tricky, right? And it's always individual preference, how much time you want to put in. Because here in Asia, we do have the option of help, and there are some people who utilize that much more than others, to different extents. It's really personal. For me, it's I think, and because this experience is quite fresh, so the child didn't ask to be born. We brought it into the world. And the first few years are not only when they need you the most, it's the most formative to who they will become in the future. They do fall sick more often and they pass it on to you. That's the part that always gets hairy.
Kicker, yeah.
That, and I think as females who are working, you want to be able to have the work to feel valued, to give value, to maintain identity, but also you have this, person really who needs you. So it's really hard. And I do have, I mentioned this as well on International Women's Day, but like I do have a lot of empathy for single parents, parents who, just and who don't have the option of additional help like we do in Asia. So I think, how do we juggle it? I think time management is key. I try to be present as much as possible throughout the working day, but where needed. And I think that's one thing that I'm quite thankful for at OD. It's the understanding, and Yasmin said OD Asia Parents Club. So there's a bunch of us around, right? You don't feel like you're alone. At the same time, I'm also conscious that, if I take a hit or if I'm down, people relying on me are kind of being let down as well. And it's not through their choice, right? Like they didn't choose to have kids, like I chose to have, right? So like, why should my team suffer because, of a circumstance that I chose, right? Even though like nobody asks for kids to fall sick and stuff like that. So I think, that time management is really crucial. Being able to be there as much for your team as possible with the flexibility and understanding that, hey, nobody's really trying to do anything, negative intentionally. Coming to the environment of trust, I think, and fellow empathy is really refreshing.
Yeah, I get that, and I totally agree with that. We definitely have a lot of parents in the team. So, and sometimes we've had people bring their kid to work, just for whatever reason, So I think we're also very supportive in that way, and we're all quite very understanding. There isn't like a clear divide between like, oh, these guys are parents and these guys don't have kids. Everyone's very and we have fur parents too. Which I love. I love fur parents to bring their fur kids in. So, question from Yeston, talking about omnichannel. What do you guys think are the key challenges facing Asian merchants in pursuit of omnichannel retail stack? What I've seen on the ground is, clunky point of sale systems. I'm just going to say it. There are people who are using legacy point of sale systems that need a whole lot of unnecessary work to make it work with their online. So I feel that the biggest challenge is working with merchants that have, being directed by HQ or regional headquarters to use a certain stack without considering the implications for omnichannel. And it's a work in progress. It's a conversation we're having all the time about, okay, is this an opportunity to change your point of sale? If it's not, all right, integration that needs to be done, and it's not just about point of sale. It's looking at loyalty. It's looking at gift cards. It's looking at, CRM data, and so there's a lot of work that goes into these integrations. And, sometimes I feel that it's intended to be a lot simpler than it is. And unfortunately, there's a lot of complexity that's unnecessary, I feel sometimes, because people's hands are tied with what they've been mandated to use. So I think that's the biggest challenge here in Asia that we're seeing on the ground. But
do you feel like, sorry, Tammy, do you feel like this is quite common, mandates from HQ?
Yeah, I've come across that quite a number of times, where, the stakeholders that we're dealing with want to overhaul it, want to go to SaaS, want to go to a simpler stack, right? And they can't, and so therefore they either invest in costly integrations, or, it becomes workarounds. And so I think it's a journey that, sometimes they have to look at, okay, what are we willing to accept now? What are we willing to do for a workaround now? And then, but they understand and accept and acknowledge that it's not sustainable. That's not how you scale. That's not how you grow.
Okay, cool, Tammy. I'm just conscious of time. Like we're actually doing really well. I think now it's a good time for us to call it. I just wanted to say thank you for the participation. Thank you for the conversation. For all those listening in, I hope, it was insightful, that you got to know a little bit about, Sarah and Tammy, or Tammy Xiu-Juin, as we know her here in the office. And yeah, if you do have any questions or anything you'd like to chat after, we're all available on LinkedIn, or you can just send an email inquiry over to the OD website. Happy to chat. With that, I think I'll let everybody go. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your days, guys, and thank you for spending this time with us. So see you next
Happy Friday.
time.
Thank you.
Bye.